In wholly unsurprising and predictable news this week, the world stock markets have continued in major meltdown, the world political leaders are all engaged in crisis meetings, and all because of one man. While President Trump is apparently supremely confident, and his financial advisors believe that they have a brilliant plan that the tariffs are all working toward, well, the rest of the world is still a factor as to whether they succeed in that plan. And that includes the rest of Trump's political party and his previous supporters, many of whom are waking up to the fact that, well, let's say this is not quite what they expected. People who interview lots of the sitting members of Congress have started to tell some of the stories. For example, left-wing podcaster David Pakman said, "Every member of Congress that I've interviewed tells me the same thing. Behind the scenes, plenty of Republicans in the House and in the Senate think Trump is unfit for office, that what he's doing economically makes no sense, that this is all a really bad idea." They won't say it publicly, most of them, because the base still loves him. They're too afraid of getting primaried, they're afraid of losing fundraising. And the key factor he observed, and it's pretty much what you should expect at this point, is the fact that this is Trump's last term. He expires in 2028, regardless of what he might hope and Steve Bannon might predict. The various Republican players, therefore, the hopefuls, they are all watching his turmoil, watching the mistakes, watching the pushback, and they're quietly preparing things for when it will become safe and the right time for them to start making their move. You may say, well, look, can we trust this information if it comes via a partisan podcaster? But it's exactly what you would expect to be happening in normal political circumstances, and nobody has abolished the laws of political gravity. Let alone when you have an individual who is blowing up the entire world economy, whether you believe it's for a purpose or chasing a delusion. We know that because of the vindictive and vengeful nature of the administration, many people from all spheres of life are keeping their heads down, but there's always some who feel themselves to be less vulnerable, or they're just built to be more contrarian and unafraid. They will be the early indicators. So, for instance, Senator Rand Paul, certainly one of the latter, he has been warning his fellow Republicans that Trump's tariff policies will likely lead to a generational political loss for the party. He said that members of Congress had abdicated their power on the power of the purse, amongst other things. Bear in mind, of course, it should be Congress, not the president, who sets tariff policy. Trump is doing all of this because he's casually invoking emergencies. An emergency over there, an emergency over here. Rand Paul said this, "I am a Republican, I am a supporter of Donald Trump, but this is a bipartisan problem. I don't care if the president is a Republican or a Democrat. I don't want to live under emergency rule. I don't want to live where my representatives can't speak for me and have a check and balance on power." This is something you should expect to see if a democracy is in the process of moving towards autocracy. There will always be those whose principles won't simply morph to fit the new reality, who will object. Rand Paul went so far as to join up with the Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, the sort of bipartisan activity that MAGA world has very little truck with, to put forward a resolution to roll back the so-called emergency tariffs on Canada. He was joined in that by GOP Senators Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell, all of whom have a history of being prepared to break from the crowd on principle as and when necessary. But it's not just these sorts of mavericks. Senator Ted Cruz warned that Republicans face a bloodbath in the midterm elections if Trump's tariffs send the US economy into recession. Cruz is typically seen as a pretty robust Trump ally. All that is really is a statement of the obvious, and even that seems like a rebellion. Republican Chuck Grassley introduced a bill in the Senate to reassert congressional control of tariff policy, making it so new levies would expire in 60 days unless approved by Congress, which would also be able to cancel tariffs at any point. Right now, that seems unlikely to be more than a symbolic whimper, but it is a visible sign of what's rising beneath the surface. All those lawmakers who have egos of their own and who see their role in Congress as having some sort of purpose, they are not going to accept forever the idea that they subordinate all of that to the whims of whoever is in the White House. Packman said that you would see the soft rollout of the preparations for change, with phrases like, "We are approaching the next generation of leadership for the Republican Party," and the hunger for the rise of fresh voices. That's almost certainly the case as far as it goes, but I would add that there's clearly another thing that's looming, which is that the downfall of Trump will be the commencement of possibly the last battle between the more traditionalist Republicans, the Nikki Haley's say, and those who would project themselves as the next MAGA standard bearers, maybe a J.D. Vance or another member of the Trump family. The traditionalists are keeping their heads down because they know that Trump has had, still has right now, an iron grip on the party. But once that grip starts to break, there will be everything to fight for, and they will see that it might well be their last chance. If MAGA continues post-Trump, it will redefine the identity of the party for the foreseeable future. Working against the second-generation MAGA group is precisely the phenomenon that they love about Trump. He commands the attention of everybody every single day with new, big, in-your-face moves and crazy initiatives. Feels good now, but eventually it leaves everyone exhausted, at best. It also creates lots of opportunities for things to go seriously wrong and to alienate many who previously were supporters, or at least would acquiesce. In his first 3 months, Trump has abruptly upended the world geopolitical order, attacking allies, supporting Russia, provoking a complete shift in attitudes in the Middle East. That's one thing. And he has crudely taken numerous internal measures, consistently seen in countries on the journey towards authoritarian rule, while also associating the US government with attempts to influence the elections of allies to the benefit of hard right, often anti-democratic parties there. It's another thing. And then he has just now, in one fell swoop, upended the global financial system, using the power of the US economy to seek to bully everyone else into negotiating accommodations which will be aimed at being as one-sided to the benefit of the US as the revised Ukraine minerals deal turned out to be. Any one of those could have completely defined a presidency. Doing all of them all at once so quickly threatens a cascade of consequences that could completely overwhelm the country and the office, which will be what the next generation of leaders will be competing for. Lucky them. And if a cast of potential replacements lack Trump's charisma, and that's pretty much a given, then they may well be incapable of overcoming the fallout from their own boss and the way that plays out once it's clear that he's a lame duck. It's by no means clear how many of the titans of business and how many of the tech bros will still be on the MAGA train by then, because quite a few of them are not exactly enjoying the ride right now. JP Morgan Chief Executive Jamie Dimon warned in his annual letter to shareholders this week that Trump's America First foreign policy was undermining the United States' special position in the world. Indeed, he said it could even lead to military warfare, as such actions had in the past. Die-hard Trump supporter Bill Ackman, CEO of Pershing Square, after saying a few fawning things about Trump, laid in with Business is a confidence game. The president is losing the confidence of business leaders around the globe. The consequences for our country and the millions of our citizens who have supported the president, in particular low-income consumers who are already under a huge amount of economic stress, are going to be severely negative. And he finished with, "This is not what we voted for." No, indeed. So will the big money brokers line up behind the successors to MAGA in a year or two's time, or will they seek out the standard bearer most likely to see some return to what they might hope to become normality once again? For now, the world is continuing to roil in turmoil at Trump's tariff initiatives, which will no doubt move around multiple times in the coming months. And every news programme and indeed current affairs YouTube channel has been turned into a "What Trump's Done This Time" show. It's all just feeding the backlash to come, which will be the signal for the fight between the Republicans and the MAGA true believers. Something at least to watch out for, the little signs that will increasingly be seen, soon to be followed by the flood.